Hello, I'm in the Välilä train factory in Helsinki, an abandoned train factory where Axopar is about to launch its brand new 37. As you can see, it's under the sheet behind me. They're going to reveal the boat tonight and we're going to have a good look around, and then tomorrow we're going to get to drive the thing. So here it is then, the new Axopar 37S, the Spider. This is the open version. Prices start from 88,000 euros, but I have to remind you that that excludes VAT and that excludes engines. Generally, Axopar give the boat to the dealers and the dealers fit the engines. Still, even with the engines, it's not a bad starting price. You can have either twin 300 or 350 horsepower Mercuries. Now the boat is exactly the same length as the 37 it replaces, but they have made some changes to the hull. And what they really want to do is make it quicker to plane, they want to make it more stable, they want to make it more economical, and what they really want to do is target new boaters. They want this boat to feel safe to drive. It's a fast boat, 50 knots plus, but they want it to appeal to new boaters, maybe people coming from supercars who've never had a boat before. They don't want to scare them, they want it to be easy to drive, but fast. So you've got the same twin steps as you had on the previous model. 2 steps here. But there's a more negative angle back here at the transom, which increases lift, so the boat gets up onto the plane more quickly, more smoothly, and it also means it runs flatter as well when the boat's at speed. And they're saying that the changes they've made have made it far more fuel efficient. At cruising speed, the range used to be on the old 37 about 200 nautical miles, now it's 300 nautical miles, and they're saying that you will get the sort of fuel consumption at 40 knots now that you did at 20 knots on the old boat. Now, much like the old 37, here aft you can have 4 different layouts. You can have it completely open, you can have it with a wet bar, you can have it with a extended lower sun pad, or you can have it with the sun pad and the cabin, and that's what this boat has got. So underneath here there's a double cabin, which I'll have a look at in a minute, but for the moment we'll keep going forward because the major changes on deck are further forward. So previously on the 37 there was a step along the floor here and then the whole area dropped down, and that made it a bit tricky to get in and out of. You catch your foot on the step and it was all a bit awkward to move around on. This completely flat now, totally flat area all the way forward. It steps up as you get right forward to the forward dinette, but apart from that, much easier to move around amidships here, and you still have this really versatile layout of 3 chairs forward, 4 chairs aft. The table obviously spreads across so that it can span the 2 seating areas, and these 3 seats can swivel either way, so they can either be 3 forward facing seats for when you're going along, or they can face the table for when the boat is at rest. Now there's access to this cabin at both ends because there's a hatch aft as well, but this big hatch here, the 2 middle seats lift up, and then you have access to this aft cabin. It's not the last word in luxury, but actually it's pretty comfortable once you're in there. Lighting in here and a little bit of glass so you've got some natural light. It's not perfect, but it's not a bad option. You move forward, you drop down quite a long way in fact into the Helm. What that means is that you're really well protected by this windscreen. It's a very, very clean dash, but I do like that they've still got proper buttons so that you're not having to scroll through the screens just to get the wipers and the horn, etc. But the Helm was one of the 37's best bits, the old 37. Still looks very good here. Driver focused, well protected. We'll see tomorrow if it actually works. But this is where the big difference is. You come down here, and on the old boat, that was it. That was your only entrance. You come in through this hatch here. But now, you've got the gullwings, both sides. Look at that. So not only can you ventilate this area much better, but you can get in and out far easier, and also you can talk to people on deck. This all comes from customer feedback. They said that they didn't use this area because it felt so enclosed. Well, fair play to Axopar, they seem to have solved that problem. And who doesn't like gullwing doors? Pop out now. It's just so much easier to get in and out with those. And for all those Merc SL fans, well, this is the floating equivalent. They're not too heavy, It's all quite simple. They lock into place, you push this button here and up they pop. I would say one ram probably isn't going to be enough over time. This is a pre-production boat, I must stress that. They're going to make all sorts of changes, but that already feels like it's losing a bit of its power, so another ram is probably going to be helpful. But it's a really nice idea. You just want to watch your head on this corner, but it transforms the way you can use that cabin. It really does. And then forward you have a second cockpit almost, far more basic, but you can also fill in this area so that you can make another sandbad here if you wish. So this is the 37 Suntop in Miami blue. It's in the Brabus trim, and it's quite useful having this here because it's got a different layout to the Spider in that it's got the wet bar option and not the sunpad cabin option. This is a real party boat. So back here you have your grill, your sink. This is where you entertain your guests from, but you still have plenty of space back here. Massive storage underneath the cockpit here for toys, stand-up paddleboard, etc. And then a nice clear deck aft so you can launch them nice and easily. The one complaint I have about the 37 is that you can't have the sunpad and the wet bar, and I think that's something that people will find that they have to compromise on. They either have the wet bar, which is great, but then you don't get the sunpad in the cabin. You can't have both, you have to pick one or the other. But and I guess that's where people are split when they're buying this boat. And the key difference here over the Spider is this enormous great hardtop. Nice structure this. You've got support here, you've got support further forward as well, up against the windscreen here. Super clean dash. This layout is exactly the same as the Spider, but what you used to find is that as you'd step up over here to get into the cockpit area, you'd hit your head on the hardtop, but now you can move into this area really easily without risking hitting your head. And again, nice easy passageway. Look how tall these are, right up to hip level. You feel very safe moving forward, and it's flat until you get right aft and right forward. So this area is extremely easy to move around on. And again, the gullwing doors, a very cool feature. So we can get a better look at the boats we're going to test today. So that's the 37 cross cabin, that's the one I'm going to start on. Then you've got the Suntop version here. This is this prototype of the Brabus Shadow 900 with a pair of 450 horsepower Mercuries on it, and a couple of 28 cabin chase boats, more next to each other there, and then that's the Shadow 500 cabin. Now this is it then, the 37 cross cabin. This one's got a pair of 350 horsepower engines, and the main difference on this boat is this protected wheelhouse. The rest of the layout's quite similar. You have the gullwing doors here, just like you do on the Spider or the cross cabin. Gullwing doors pop up from here, but you have the shelter of this wheelhouse. Trying to go for top speed now. Full RPM, engine is trimmed up a bit, 115 litres per hour on each engine, and we've just hit 50 knots, 50.8, 50.9, nearly 51 knots. And it's, well, feels very comfortable at this speed, very planted. Trimming it back down a touch just to take some throttle off and go for a turn, and I mean that's turning pretty hard at 44 knots. Yeah, you lose very little speed in the turn, still do 40 knots when we're turning it, give it a bit more wheel, and yeah, I mean there's endless grip actually, but there's no sensation of speed. I mean the engines are quiet anyway, mixing the fact that you're inside a wheelhouse, and really you wouldn't know that they're there. Quite calm in this section, but this is just the sort of weather where the hole's really good, short chop. So we're on the 37 Suntop now. This has got a pair of 300 horsepower engines, so 50 horsepower less per side than the cabin that we started on, so it'll be interesting to see how that affects the performance. In terms of the layout of the boat, well, it's very similar, apart from obviously no wheelhouse. And this boat has got the open aft deck, So you have this perch here. You could have a sunpad here. You could have another cabin here, which lifts up, and you can have, you know, 2 other people sleeping back here as well as the cabin forward. But on this boat, this lifts up, and you've just got space for storage for water toys, etc. But obviously it feels far more open. This is the boat really designed for the Med. Not exactly designed for these conditions, but we'll see how it goes anyway. So this boat's got the 300 horsepower engines, but of course it's lighter than the cross cabin. I'm carrying that wheelhouse around, so see what the performance is like. Obviously you hear the engines more on this boat, you're far more exposed. I mean, it's really designed for the Med, not Helsinki in November. We're at 41 knots now, getting up towards full revs. That's now flat out, 25 knots. Trim around a touch. That's about as So that's the Suntop, not in the weather it was designed for, but you can still appreciate the hull. The hull is really sweet. It's so soft riding, and it really looks after you. No matter how much experience you have, you'd struggle to make this boat put a foot wrong. And actually performance was really good, despite the fact we've got 100 horsepower less. We've also got less weight than the wheelhouse version, so we still managed just shy of 50 knots. But with these pair of 300s, crucially, you can still do that 40 knot cruise. You can cruise at 20 knots, you can cruise at 45 knots, and the boat feels so comfortable doing it. Decent mix of conditions out there, quite a short chop inside the islands, and outside it was a bit lumpier, slightly longer following sea, and you know, the boat really relishes those conditions. We had some issues with the pop-up gullwing doors on the cabin version. The port side one kept popping up, the latch wasn't quite holding it in place, which is something I was a bit concerned about when I first saw it last night. But this boat's been absolutely fine. They both stayed down, and you know, everything felt of a piece, and it just romped through that chop we were in early on very, very solidly. Now this is a bit of a special treat. They didn't tell us this was going to be here. Very much a prototype and a mule. It's the Brabus Shadow 900. It's going to be launched at Dusseldorf. It's based on the 37, but like what they do with the Brabus line, it's got loads of upgrades, lots of carbon fibre everywhere. This has got the Brabus seats. You can see it's nowhere near the final spec, but you're seeing the Brabus touches, including things like the steering wheel that you're not going to get on the standard Axopar. But the key thing is that this has got two 450 horsepower Mercury racing engines. You cannot get that on the 37. It's only for the Brabus line. These things are absolute monsters, and they're saying they've had 65 knots out of this boat, which in this rain is going to be quite painful, but can't not give it a go. For a bit of a closer look, so much like the Axopar, you can have a similar sort of layout back here, whatever you choose. This one's got the sun pad, there's no cabin under there. You can see the sort of Brabus detailing on the deck here. This has got the Brabus camouflage as well, as you can see. Quite different at the helm because you've got proper glass bridge. See how the screens are sunk into the dashboard there? Looks really smart, and these are a bit of a sign of things to come. And you have this multi-function steering wheel as well. So you have things like the trim tabs, you have your barrel thruster, you have AV right under your thumb where you need it. And this boat has got a joystick for the Mercury outboards. So that juggles the two joysticks, vexes them so that you push that to the right, the whole boat moves to the right. And if you go up forward, got the gullwing doors again, just like on the 37. The layout is exactly the same, you just get some Nice upgrades that you won't get aboard a standard Axopar 37. Some more of these Brabus touches. The Brabus down there, you've got the Brabus tread plates, Brabus B here in the middle of the steering wheel. Little touches everywhere that remind you that you're on a Brabus product. Anything left to do now is drive it. Running out of battery a bit here, but couldn't film on that thing, it's just too open and too quick. But we did 65 knots and so easily. I've never been on anything that performs so comfortably. The performance is ridiculously accessible because you have auto trim, the legs are trimming up and down, you have rev matching. All you have to worry about are the engines, the throttles I should say. 40 knots feels like 20 knots. You can cruise at 50 knots no problem, and it's not perfect conditions today by any stretch. It's quite choppy out there, but we're in a sort of 2-3 foot head sea, 40-42 knots and flat out 65 knots. I mean, that is incredible performance, especially for a boat that's so usable. It's got a cabin, it's got a toilet, it's got a wet bar, it's got sun pads, but it'll do 65 knots. And this is just a mule. I have to say, I'm massively impressed, and those 450 horsepower engines are just astonishing.